The black male was lynched and often castrated because of the white male fear of the black male's, the myth is the black male's extraordinary sexual capacity. So he was lynched by frightened white males who feared that if he ever got anywhere near the white women, that somehow the white male would be a Now,
well,
you want to add
now
to
his sexual capacity. What are we talking about? I say that the fear is that the black male can cause white genetic annihilation.
That old thing called racism. Now, it's gonna be deep. Are racism and sex linked together? What up, guys? I am Sa Ra Garvey. Please like, share, comment and subscribe as we get into this one. Now, this one is going to ruffle some feathers. This one is going to make you think. This one is going to cause a little bit of a stir. Now, today, what we're going to do is we are going to talk about racism, that thing that nobody wants to speak about, that thing that makes people a little bit uncomfortable, that thing, that elephant that sits in the room all the time and never gets addressed. We're going to try and look at it from a psychological standpoint and try to understand why it actually exists. So, as we get started, we are going to read the definitions from the Oxford Dictionary for what racism is. Here it goes. Racism: the unfair treatment of people who belong to a different race, violent behavior towards them. 2. The belief that some races of people are better than others, or a general belief about a whole group of people based only on their race. Now, that definition seems legit. I think all people that have read that definition in Oxford Dictionary actually think, yeah, that one makes sense. However, me, myself, what I like to do is I like to look at things holistically. I like to look at the why. This is a microphone. I could describe a microphone. But for me, I ask myself, for what reason was a microphone invented? And when I come to that conclusion, I get a more well-rounded answer as to why a microphone exists. So why does racism exist? Let's look at the definition from a woman by the name of Frances Cress Welsing. Who is Frances Cress Welsing? Frances Cress Welsing is a black American psychologist and psychiatrist, and this is how she defines racism after studying it for decades. Racism, white supremacy, is the local and global power system and dynamic structured and maintained by persons who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined, which consists of patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response, as conducted simultaneously in the areas of people activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, for the ultimate purpose of white genetic survival and to prevent the white genetic annihilation on the planet, a planet upon which the vast majority of people are classified as non-white, black, brown, red, and yellow, by white-skinned people, and all of the non-white people are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration, compared to the genetic recessive white-skinned people. Now, that was a lot to take in. Frances Cress Welsing rose to fame in the 70s and 80s by being a black female psychiatrist and writing various books on racism. She was attempting, as a psychiatrist, to understand racism from a psychological level. And because of that, she was invited on various shows and to do various lectures. Now, what we're going to do right now is we are going to watch her speak to a famous talk show host in the 80s by the name of Donahue. Let's see what she had to say.
Why am I doing this? For example, When I was a very small child, I wanted to understand why black men were lynched. I asked my grandmother and parents, why would this be done? And my grandmother gave a statement. She said something like, well, some people just want to act ugly. But that wasn't sufficient, you know, as a psychiatrist.
May I interrupt for just a moment? Here's the read on that, and I know you want to add to this or make it just a little more complicated. The black male was lynched and often castrated because of the white male fear of the black male's, the myth is the black male's extraordinary sexual capacity. So he was lynched by frightened white males who feared that if he ever got anywhere near the white women, that somehow the white male would be a Now,
well,
you want to add
now
to
his
that.
sexual capacity, what are we talking about? I say that the fear is that the black male can cause white genetic annihilation. And this is why the attack on the genitals, there's no history in the world of any non-white men attacking white men's genitals. But why do white men feel the need to zero in on the black man's genitals and cut them off?
Yeah.
You see, and a lot of this is played out in symbolic behavior in this culture. For example, the culture says, keep your eye on the ball.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute. Look at something that,
I'll get there to this one second.
see, look at something that people do not look at. Look at the game of billiards. See, the psychiatrist knows that through games we play out subconscious activity.
Yes, they do.
Okay, now look at this game. Here's a game with colored balls.
Yes.
All over the table.
And guess who gets to shoot the ball?
The white ball knocks all the colored balls under the table.
And often saves the black
And then the
one
black ball, right,
till last.
till last.
Because there's a specialness about the black. Yeah. Let me, Dr. Wellesley, now, you're not surprised at the response of this audience. Just a couple of things here for the sake of our conversation. First of all, we welcome your contribution. That is, for what it's worth, I certainly do. Which does not mean, therefore, that I or this audience necessarily agree with everything you say. But let me tell you what I think is important. I don't think we've asked enough questions about this thing called racism, which has, in my opinion, the capacity to bring us down as a nation, if not, certainly not only here, but in many parts of the world. It is in the American bloodstream, and it's especially manifest here. So good for you trying to figure this out, because it's my, no kidding, it's my opinion, not enough smart people are really speaking to this. We run away from this. Another point you make, you think the token black is an effort to assuage this hidden feeling that we have? Is that, how do you explain?
Well, the token black, I mean, you might say that was under pressure. You see, that you have to, the civil rights movement, you have to include some non-white people. But every effort is made to move around that. Mm-hmm. And I understand, I mean, it's tragic. Mm-hmm. And it's injustice. Yeah. And I'm not just saying here, I'm saying all over this planet.
For some reason, when black peoples meet with other peoples and they are oppressed, for some reason, the other oppressed peoples tend to cut off their penises. It happened in the Muslim Arab world when the Muslims were at the height of enslaving African people. They too cut off African men's penises. They even sometimes made them into eunuchs, cutting off both the penis and the testicles. And as a psychiatrist, or as somebody who wants to try and understand why, what we kind of realize is that there is some kind of, whether conscious or subconscious, conversation going on in the head about black male virility and the black male penis. Now, these two people are not the only people to come to the same conclusion. Another astrophysicist and historian called Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I have featured on this channel before, actually has a conversation about this on a radio show in America.
This was written about, Stephen Gould wrote about this in his book, The Mismeasure of Man. There's a shelf in the British Museum that has a brain in a jar. And it's the brain of a famous a psychologist, anthropologist, Broca, okay? And next to it, on another shelf, are the genitals of a black male African in a jar.
Wow.
Well, that kind of says it all. Did you save the brain of the African? No, you saved his genitals. Did you save the genitals of Broca? No, you saved his brain. So the inherent bias that shaped how this world now sees itself is tragic.
Yeah.
But so what you need to think of, Africa has all of this diversity. It's not about skin color. It's about all the rest of what it is to be human.
Yeah.
Again, an unhealthy obsession with the black male penis. There has to be something to this. There has to be something that goes deeper than just the conscious level if this is happening continuously amongst people when they come into contact with black men. Now, I, as a black man, have lived on this planet for a while, and other black men could probably attest to the fact that when you come into contact with white women, there's a question on their mind, and they say things like, hey, is it true what they say about black guys? Is it true that, you know, the black penis is bigger than other ones? Is it true that the black man is more virile than the other ones? And it's very interesting to me for that to be on people's minds. That must be on your mind consciously or subconsciously. Now, I've always said that the uncomfortable conversations, the unspoken conversations, are where we find the answers. Now, when it comes to unconscious conversations and subconscious conversations, I myself have always stated that if you want to understand a society and understand the unconscious and the taboo conversations that go on in people's heads, the one place you have to go to, if it actually exists, is the porn industry. When you go to the sex industry in the West, what you find is that there is a huge consumption of sexual material around black male virility. Now, a lot of the stuff that happens in this is not allowed to be spoken in the public sphere. It's an unconscious conversation. It's a subconscious conversation. It's not allowed to be spoken about. However, the sex industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry that makes money off the fact that black males can actually, I'm trying not to get banned here, can actually have penetrative sex with dainty white females, and it's celebrated. It is not only celebrated, but it is consumed by the millions. Also, when you go to Pakistan, it's actually reported that homosexual porn in Pakistan is the most Googled type of porn. Now, Pakistan is a very strict country with very strict rules about homosexuality. However, it's the most Googled type of porn. There are subconscious and unconscious and unspoken about conversations going on all around the world. And at some point, somebody's got to try and unearth them. And this is what I'm trying to attempt to do when it comes to racism. Why does racism exist? People don't just wake up and decide, hang on a minute, I don't like said individual, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to oppress them. There has to be a conversation that goes on in the head of the bully. Now, any psychologist or psychiatrist worth their salt, if a bully was brought to them and there was a child in the playground and they were just minding their own business, and this bully attempted to continuously bully this child, people would point at the bully and say, that bully has something wrong with them. That child hasn't actually done anything to the bully. So the question now becomes, when it comes to racism, what did black people actually do to deserve it? Why were they oppressed? Why were they enslaved? Why? What did they do to other people? And as far as I can see, is nothing. And so just saying that people are upset or they're bad people does not suffice for me. There must be an unconscious or subconscious conversation going on in the minds of people for them to enact these types of behaviors. Now, I, about 6 years ago, done a video talking about this also. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play that video right now.
I go via two schools of thought. I go via the Michael Bradley School of Thought, and I go via the Frances Cress Welsing School of Thought. And those two together, reading both of their books, Michael Bradley's The Iceman Inheritance and Frances Cress Welsing's The ISIS Papers, and a lot of her other lectures, I feel like they've given me a well-rounded view as to why racism exists. Because no one goes into the why. Most people talk about racism not understanding what it actually is and the why and the motivation for it. Because you've got to understand that it's a psychological thing. There's a conversation going on in the minds of people when racism comes about. And so many people are scared to deal with it. They're scared to talk about it. It's like the elephant in the room that no one wants to speak about. But I love to speak about it. And I'd love to hear everyone else's views on it. I mean, if I'm honest, I don't think people are ever going to be honest about racism. That's my own personal belief. I don't think people are going to be honest, because it would mean looking inside yourself and looking in the mirror. Most people ain't ready to look inside that mirror and say, you know what, I'm this and I'm that and I do that because of that and that's bad and I'm a bad person. Most people ain't ready for that. I think the racism argument is one that needs to be spoken about honestly and openness of. They understand that this thing will be the thing to eventually dominate them, so they want to stop it. You know, you have to couple that with the whole hyper-aggressive black male, the big black penis. You know, the whole conversation that goes on within white females sometimes, and they talk, and when you ask them to be honest, and they say, oh yeah, you know, are the rumours true about black guys, and black guys are this, and black guys are... So there's a subconscious conversation going on about the black male penis.
Fear of genetic annihilation. How realistic is that the reason for racism to be existing? Now, when you look at the populations of the planet, what you will find is that white-skinned people, Europeans, only make up around 10% of the world's population. The rest of the world are what is deemed as people of color. So essentially, who is the minority? Europeans are. White-skinned people are. On the planet that we have today, white-skinned people are the minority. We have Asians, we have Arabs, we have Indians, we have Africans, and we have all other colors in between. And when it comes to white-skinned people, they make up the minority on the planet. So if they are the minority, all that needs to happen is for the rest of the world to impregnate all of the European women on the planet, and the white race will cease to exist. There is no need for the races of the planet to go to war. The war, the gun, the missile, essentially, is between your legs. So, in 1987, a book was written by a man called Ben Wattenberg. It was called The Birth Dearth. What happens when people in free countries don't have enough babies? So he details what was happening with Europeans and their babies. Europeans were not having enough babies, and he predicted that by a certain point in time in the future, the European population would dwindle. And it's actually happening now. We can see that certain places within Europe are at what they call minus birth rate. Certain places within the rest of the world, people are still having babies. So essentially, what he said was right. However, some people may rubbish that idea. But if you go on the internet and try and look for this book is actually priced at over $1,000. It sounds absolutely crazy, but you have to ask yourself, what is in this book? Why they would price this book at over $1,000 if you want to purchase it. Some places you can probably get it for $400, maybe $5, maybe $3. But essentially there are places on the internet, if you want to get your hands on this book, it's over $1,000. There must be something within this book that explains a lot. So how is sex and race tied together? Well, according to Frances Cress Welsing, it's about genetic annihilation. It's about the fact that you need to build a system where your genetic pool, where your gene pool is protected from being annihilated genetically. And the reason for racism is basically people trying to stop their gene pool being annihilated. So how again are sex and racism tied? In America, there was a man called Dylan Roof, white man, and he went into a black church and he shot multiple black people. Now, he actually left a manifesto. And in his manifesto, what was he speaking about? He spoke about the dwindling of the white race. Again, genetics. So there is a fear, whether consciously or subconsciously, in many white people, that their gene pool is being, for want of a better term, diluted. Now what Francis Welsing has concluded is that black peoples generally don't have this fear. Because black genetics can be so dominant, if I as a black man have a baby with a Chinese woman, people would normally call that baby black, and so on and so on. So black people have never really had a fear of genetic annihilation because they understand that their genetics can be quite dominant. However, when you don't have dominant genetics and other people can come in, even if a Chinese person has sex with a white woman, they would probably call that child Chinese or half Chinese, half Indian, half whatever. They never really say that it's a fully white baby. And if you have this fear, psychologically, it could be down to one of the reasons why racism exists. Could be. Now, in my video, I actually stated that I don't think that racism is going anywhere anytime soon. Why? Because people aren't willing to have the conversation and be honest. I think people are hiding behind their conscious and subconscious minds when it comes to racism, and it only takes somebody of courage to actually say, you know what, I think like this. This is the reason why I think like this. This is my fear, and this is what it is. And I think that self-reflection is part and parcel of growth. If you don't reflect upon the things that you've done and the way that you think and the way that you operate, you don't grow as a person. So what we will generally see again are things like Dylan Roof. We will see explosions of really hard racism because the conversation of race is not spoken about on a deep enough level for everyone to get to a conclusion. And I think people are generally running from the conversation of racism. Me, however, I like to see what's going on, and I could be wrong, and I'm open to being wrong, but at least I'm open to having the conversation. I have been Sa Ra Garvey. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this. Listen, leave your comments, disagree, agree. It is absolutely fine. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand the thing that generally isn't spoken about or is brushed under the carpet. I have attempted to try and understand what this thing called racism is. You may disagree with me, and that is 100% okay. Leave your comments, leave your likes, leave whatever it is down below. Let's get the conversation going. I am open to being wrong. You should be open to being wrong, but we should all be open to growth. So let's grow. I'm going to catch you on the flip side.